In step with our best of Computex coverage, we're moving from cases to video cards. This year has been a huge milestone year for all of the silicon manufacturers, with NVIDIA introducing Pascal, AMD introducing Polaris, and Intel moving to Broadwell E and Kaby Lake later this year. Today we're focusing on the GTX 1080 AIB cards though. Before that, this coverage is brought to you by Enermax and their new Lick Max Giant Open Loop Liquid Cooler with RGB LED support. Polaris 10 and the RX 480 didn't reveal in time for AIB partners to debut cards at Computex, and the GTX 1070 AIB models were only presented by EVGA for some reason. So for this roundup, we're sticking to the 1080 models, but there's plenty to work with here anyway, and there's no particular order to this list. Short of a Kingpin model, EVGA's most impressive feat of engineering in the current generation is its GTX 1080 Classified, which runs a 14+3 phase power design and is fitted with a monstrous heatsink. The card is able to bypass VBIOS limitations by connecting to EVBot, and that's an external hardware utility if you're not aware. Theoretically, this will allow a higher overclock to be pushed with the extra overvoltage to stabilize the clock rate. The reason for the use of the word theoretically is because there may yet be other limitations within the NVIDIA VBIOS or drivers or something like that, but we're still exploring those issues. The classified card is TBD on its price, as is the new version of the Hybrid, and we built our own GTX 1080 Hybrid previously, pretty recently, but EVGA's has got a cleaner, more official look and versioning to it. EVGA told us that they saw very similar cooling performance to what we tested in our labs on our own hacked together Hybrid, and that plants the Hybrid version of the 1080 at around 18 Celsius delta T over ambient. That's a massive performance improvement that reduces voltage and power leakage and improves overall clock stability, and just generally being a cooler GPU. We're most interested though in the Hybrid and the FTW versions of the card, just because the tremendously effective cooling solution on the Hybrid. EVGA uses an Asetek block that has an extruded copper cold plate, something which benefits the GPU greatly when compared to something like the Seahawk, which is a card that has the H55 CPU CLCs from Corsair, and the Hybrid runs a 10+2 phase VRM and uses the same board design as the FTW card, so it is effectively an FTW Hybrid. Both of these have extra power headers, as does the Classified, and only the EVGA SC lacks custom designs and is effectively a reference 1080, but with the ACX 3.0 cooler for $650. We tried live overclocking MSI's Twin Frozer Z card at their Computex suite, but ended up limited by SLI complexities and just being on a show floor. Still, the new Twin Frozer cards move to an updated square heat pipe design for greater surface area and points of contact on the heatsink, and they also use a new dispersion blade fan design, so that uses an intermixed assortment of dispersion blades and traditional fan blades to help push and pull air as necessary through the aluminum heatsink. These are mounted to the faceplate, of course, which is atop the heatsink, and the heatsink has 5 to 6 heat pipes within it, and these are the new square design. MSI has updated its GPU line as well, with the Z video cards at the high end, the X in the middle, and gaming cards at the bottom, and that's their new stack. The GTX 1080Z ships with the highest clock and a 10+1 phase VRM. The memory phasing does seem a bit odd, maybe should be 10+2 or something like that. But the gaming series will run a more simplified VRM. We're not sure on the exact specifications of that just yet. We do know, however, that MSI's cards will reach all the way down to the $600 MSRP that NVIDIA posted during its initial announcement of the 1080. There is no Lightning as of yet. You may have seen the black and yellow beast in some of our footage up to now or in previous videos, and the one at the show, the one that you've seen, is sadly only a 980 Ti Lightning. There is no 1080 Lightning just yet. GByte is one of the biggest competitors in the market. We recently toured their SMT line in Taiwan to see how video cards and motherboards are made, revealing a pretty high volume operation. The G1 Gaming is GByte's more entry-level video card, priced at $650 and outfitted with a simpler heatsink than its larger brother. The G1 Gaming and Extreme Gaming cards are both limited on information right now, with the VRM phasing and overvoltage specs presently undefined, at least by the representatives at the booth and suite. And the Extreme Gaming card uses a stacked fan cooler, so this is something new for GByte. Basically, it's 2 sets of fan blades stacked centrally with flanking normal fans on either side. It's a weird setup, and we're not really sure how the turbulence and noise are or how it will cool, but it should be interesting to test once we get one in our labs. The Extreme Gaming card should be about $670 to $680, and the G1 Gaming will be about $650. We discovered ASUS's Strix on the show floor at Computex, hidden away in an XG Station 2 external GPU enclosure. The Strix mostly focuses on advertising ASUS's low-noise cooler and hosts a more toned-down 8+2 VRM phasing design. It's not going as hard on the overclocking subtext as some of its competitors, which should help with the price positioning. The GTX 1080 Strix is making the most noise with its Aura RGB LEDs, and when I say noise, I mean marketing, not actual noise. And that does seem to be a big thing these days, even though I haven't mentioned it. GByte also had RGB LEDs, EVGA also had RGB LEDs, and MSI had RGB LEDs. So this is really something that pretty much everyone's got at this point. Besides that, it's just more TBD on some of the ASUS products in the near future. Now, speaking very briefly of, again, MSI, they partnered with Corsair, and so there's two video cards with different names, but it's the same device. It is the exact same card, and that is the Seahawk from MSI or the Hydro Graphics, if buying from Corsair's web store. Same device. It's a liquid-cooled GTX 1080, and it's using an H55 CPU closed-loop liquid cooler mounted to the GPU block. And we reviewed the original Seahawk in 980 Ti form if you're curious about how that performed. Now, there were other cards and vendors at Computex, but these are the ones that we had the most hands-on time with. There's Gallick and Zotac and plenty of other folks who had interesting cards. We'll hopefully be talking about those more in the near future. But for now, this is what we've got. And just one thing closing out here, I'm not quite sure how well the ultra high-end cards will perform just yet. Sort of like the classified and extreme gaming devices, we're unsure of where they will be landing in the performance stack because of limitations in VBIOS and elsewhere. And depending on if these vendors will bypass those limitations, it remains to be seen if there's sort of asymptotic frame rate performance or overclock performance, and this is something that we're investigating actively and we'll keep you all updated on. That's all for this recap. Subscribe to see the rest of our Computex coverage. As always, Patreon link in the postal video to help us out directly. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time.